post. The whole point of this is that we are using social media to be positive for our own personal growth and not just a black hole of terrible social media ness. Okay.
Welcome to the Warrior Mindset Podcast. We're your guide as you make your way through life, getting better 1% every day. We believe that life is lived and true victory won through adversity. Nothing easy is ever worth it. We believe in the warrior ethos and support those that choose to walk that path.
It's a great account. Leaders Only Co. I don't know. It's just one that popped up and I've followed them for a little bit and they've got some good stuff. This one on discipline. What is discipline? Discipline is when you don't feel like it, but you do it anyway. Discipline is when you are tired, but you get your ass up and do what needs to be done. Discipline is when you do what you don't want to do now so you can get what you want later. Discipline is something very few people have. That is discipline. There's a great one about, it's Mike Tyson talking about discipline, and it kind of sums all this up. Man, I love it. Thinking about what discipline means to me and where I can cultivate it and where I can find it, even in the tiny little things, gets me going. This is pretty good. From Driven Mind Training, I dig this one. The 5 mental shifts that improve performance. They've got some really great stuff. If you want some really solid, daily inspiration, they're a great one to follow. Embrace hard instead of avoiding it. Right? That bring it on mindset. Challenge is good. I love being pushed. You've got to change the way you look at things that are hard and difficult to do, in that they are a challenge that you should enjoy, okay? And not just a task that you have to overcome. Embrace your imperfections instead of trying to hide them. Our insecurities, we all walk around and think that our insecurities stick out like a sore thumb. Let me rephrase that. The things that we think other people see become our insecurities, but the reality is they don't normally see them. Embrace a get to mindset instead of a have to. This is an important distinction between building discipline and falling short. If you start with a little gratitude in terms of, man, if you start with, man, this workout's going to suck, I don't know how I'm going to do it, instead of looking at it that way, you look at, man, I get to do this. I'm healthy enough. I'm strong enough. I get to do this. It's going to change your outlook. Embracing setbacks as necessary to achieve greater success. Success is not a linear drive. It is like a hockey stick, right? You have to fall short before you can learn how to really grow. And I'm personally a good example of that, because I've fallen short in my life way more than I've succeeded, but every time I've learned from it and have come out stronger on the other side. Embrace the unexpected as an opportunity to adapt instead of complaining about it. How many times do we just sit and whine and complain about something instead of just dealing with it? A good friend of mine told me once, after our first degree black belt test, that he used to run inside when it was raining to try not to get wet, but he always found that he got wet anyway. So now he just walks inside. You're going to get wet either way. Here's a cool one from Be Champion Minded. A champion mindset is not about being gifted or talented. It's about being prepared, focused, disciplined, and having a deep, unshakable belief in oneself. The reality is, some days you'll feel great and some days you'll feel terrible. Some days you're inspired and some days you can't even find the motivation to get out of bed. But here's what really matters. You have a vision and you believe in yourself, because there's no limit to what you can achieve. Your vision will drive you. Your job is to create a vision that makes you want to leap out of bed each morning and attack the day. Building those little habits into your routine that are mission focused, that are not outcome focused, that are process focused. That is how to get there. I love that. This is a cool one from Misha Tate. I saw this a while back and thought I would try to share it here. She says she has mixed feelings on if versus when phrasing when you're manifesting things. For her example, when I get this job versus if I get this job. In her case, when I win this fight or if I win this fight. Uh, she says that when sounds inevitable and forceful and like it's a predetermined outcome. And she says she can appreciate that positive thought process of manifesting this concept that it will happen. However, sometimes if you are really putting everything into that one basket, it can be a devastatingly crushing blow if it doesn't actually happen. In the case of like a world title, um, you spent, 6 months, a year training, and you've had a really hard camp that's 6 or 8 weeks. I mean, you've been suffering, and you get there and everything is aligned with this, and then it just doesn't happen. Someone beats you. That can crush you. And um, a little slight adjustment in how you use the phrasing to manifest those things can really go a long way. And I appreciate her sharing that because of who she is and some of the things she's gone through. And if you don't know who Misha Tate is, just look up Misha Tate, Ronda Rousey.
You just have to be able to do it once to see that it works. There's a quote that I heard that meant a lot to me, which was, fear is a mile wide and an inch deep. If you just take the first step, you're like, it's a fucking puddle. I can just skip through it. But I think most people think it's like the Bermuda Triangle. It's usually not as bad as we think.
So this is Leila Hormozi. We worked with an early version of their company way back early on in the early days of the gym. And they were very successful in helping grow that gym. And she's very smart. She gets overshadowed, I think, by her husband, Alex Hormozi. She has a lot of stuff on the internet as well, which I think is very useful as well. So you should look into her. But this thing about fear, and we've been talking about fear a lot on the show here, and I think that it's very poignant to so this is Leila Hormozi, and she gets overshadowed by her husband Alex Hormozi a lot. If you're on the internet at all, you've probably seen his stuff, but she has an equal amount of good stuff. And this discussion about fear, yeah, let's listen to it.
Just have to be able to do it once to see that it works. There's a quote that I heard that meant a lot to me, which was, fear is a mile wide and an inch deep.
What a great quote. Fear is a mile wide and an inch deep. Fear is more scary before you get started.
Just take the first step. You're like, it's a fucking puddle. I can just skip through it. But I think most people think it's like the Bermuda Triangle. It's
right. We think that
usually not.
When we start something new and then it's going to go bad, we're scared of it because we think it's so binary. We think it's all, yes or no. And, life doesn't work like that, does it? Life is a series of gray areas where you can try something and it may not work out for you, and you can try something else, and it's all good. I think that's her point here, and I think it's a good point. We've all heard of Simon Sinek. I'm a fan of his, and I like what he has to say here.
I don't understand very complicated things, so I ask a lot of questions just so that I understand it. A long time ago, I had a client. They invited me to sit in on a meeting from the consultant that they had hired. All the C-level executives sitting there nodding, and I didn't understand a frickin' word of it. And so I'd raise my hand and say, I know I'm the only person in this room without an MBA, but this doesn't make sense. Can you just say it again, please? I'm really sorry to slow the meeting down, everybody. And one by one, all the C-level executives said, yeah, I don't understand it either. Now, if the idiot hadn't spoken up and said, I don't understand, they all would have nodded their heads for fear of looking stupid, and they would never have used it and would have sat on a shelf.
Man, that is ego. What he's talking about is ego working against you. He's in a room with all these executives, and none of them have the humility to stop the person talking and say, I don't know what you're talking about, because they have to look like the C-level executive. They have to fill that part, right? So think about that. Think about how your ego, and it's probably subconscious for most people, because again, we get in these things where we're playing these roles, right? And I'm playing this role, so I'm the leader of this company and I have to behave in a certain way. That can actually get in the way of you making progress. That can make you make mistakes because you can become blind to not asking the right questions at the right time. And I think that's the story he's telling here. And it's a great one.
When you're on your way up, everyone roots for you because you remind them of their dreams. When you're at the top, everyone tears you down because you remind them that they gave up on them.
Right? So while you are in the trenches working on whatever it is that you're working on, building your business, working on yourself, becoming a better you, and we'll talk about that in a second, everybody's going to be sort of on your side until you start to make more progress than they do.
Everybody, when I was sleeping on the gym floor, right? Like, I was the underdog, and everyone, my clients were all like, "Oh, good for you. You're going after your dream." They'd see my blanket and my pillow in the corner of the gym, and they knew I was sleeping there, and it was evident. I lived there. Everybody was like pro me, and then people would come in, they sign up like, I'm gonna support you, right? And then within 9 months, I had hired people and I had a manager, and I pulled up, and I remember I walked in the lobby, and all the same people were like, "Oh, boss man's here. Oh, you're not too good for us now," right?
What an interesting take. So if you're not familiar, this is Alex Hormozy. The original iteration of the gym that I now own, we worked with his original company, Jim Launch or Jim Lords. I don't remember the exact name of it before. If you follow him, before he sold that business, but early on he ran gyms himself, and he started with just opening one, and he didn't have the money to have a business and a home, so he slept in the gym. And what he's talking about is how early on everyone was sort of on his side, right? They were his fans when he was sort of down and out and building. But as soon as he opened more than one location and he was not sleeping there anymore, they began to, look at him in a way like, "Oh, well, you're Mr. Boss Man," and stuff, like he says. And that's really interesting. So something I notice with coaching fitness clients and things is that you can be trying to affect your diet. You can try to be wanting to eat more healthy and make time to exercise and things, and eat people even as close as your family can begin to pull you down, because one of the things, and what happens, here's a scenario, you're trying to eat a certain diet, whatever that is, you're cutting calories, or whatever you're trying to do, and you'll be at a family cookout or at home for dinner or out to dinner, whatever, and you're not eating the same things they are, so they begin to talk down to you or question your family loyalty because you're not eating the food that they're making or whatever. Or they say like you're too good for it or whatever. So they're breaking you down, even though you are working and becoming successful at the thing that you want to be successful at. In this case, losing weight. It's an interesting dynamic, and you should be aware of it. And it's something that everyone does. And maybe give yourself a little self-reflection and check yourself to see if you are yourself doing this to other people. Let's look at the amazing Steve Jobs. I've been a fan of his for a long time. Let's see what he has to say about failure. We've been doing quite a number of failure shows, or fear of failure shows. And, what better person to get than Steve Jobs to drop a quote.
Most people never pick up the phone and call. Most people never ask. And that's what separates sometimes the people that do things from the people that just dream about them. You gotta act. And you've got to be willing to fail. You've got to be willing to crash and burn, with people on the phone, with starting a company, with whatever. If you're afraid of failing, you won't get very far. Most people never.
If you're afraid of failing, you won't get very far. He is, historically, famously known for being a little rough around the edges with the advice he doles out to others. But now in retrospect, when we watch these older videos of him and stuff, they're quite momentous, in my opinion. This one in particular, it seems as though Steve Jobs was never really afraid of failure in that sense. He's, we could go into his history of, starting Apple and being the man in charge and essentially losing control of it, starting Next, having Apple buy them back and becoming CEO again, and leading that company back to, becoming probably the most successful American company ever in the history of everything. He had thousands of failures along the way. It wasn't something that he had success every time he turned the corner. I mean, he failed spectacularly. There's books and movies made about it. And there's something there. If he can fail on that such a spectacular level, I think we can each play with failure on a much smaller level, So, take that class, be first, try the new thing, don't worry so much about other people's opinions in what you think you might look like in those scenarios. Channel Steve Jobs, if you will. This is Ryan Holiday. He is commercially probably the number one intellectual on Stoicism, like Marcus Aurelius, stuff like that. He's got a ton of books. I'm a big fan of his. He's got some cool points here. Let's break them down.
Be brutally honest Stoic reminders. Number one, your opinions are your problem. Epictetus says, look, when you're offended, you have to realize that it takes two to tango. He says, we are complicit in the taking of offense. You don't have to have an opinion about this. You don't have to take it personally. You can think the best of it. You can ignore it. You can realize that in many cases, you probably got off easy. Let it go. Move on. Don't take it personal.
Man, I wish everyone would do this. I struggle with this. You don't have to have an opinion about what someone says, right? You don't have to take offense to something. You can choose not to. Being offended by something is a choice. And I'm not talking about, blatant offense to your face, theft or attacking you or whatever. I'm just talking about the fact that we see in this country, America, we seem to be insulted by almost everything daily. And, a little stoicism could go a long way in realizing that my being offended is my problem. It's not the person who's existing. It's not their problem. It's mine, and it's how I react to it.
Number two, most things are not in your control. Your opinions are up to you, but pretty much everything else isn't. You don't control what happens. You control how you respond to what happens. That is the basis of Stoicism, and it's the basis of being a mature, responsible adult in the world. And
you don't control what happens, but you control how you respond to what happens. Man, take that to your grave. It goes to the number one, but it also is a great way to live if you think about controlling the things you can control. You can't control the universe. You can't control other people, but what you can control is how you respond to things. I struggle with this a lot because I don't have like real anxiety much about a lot. I don't have a lot of I'm not like an obsessive person, but I do have a little bit of an issue in that I worry and I kind of spin and I carry some anxiety over my thoughts, in that I think about things in a certain way. And maybe I will respond to someone in my mind almost in a violent way, but I have to remember that it's not what I think, it's how I actually respond, how I emote, how I let those things out. So you are made up of your thoughts, but you are not your thoughts and feelings. You are your interactions with the world. And that's a great way to sort of break things down, including like, the people I work with, if they are annoying me or offending me, it's how I respond to them and remaining in a professional, outwardly interaction with them is what's important, not necessarily having anxiety over the way I feel about it. I hope that makes sense.
Number 3, this is the bluntest of them all. You are going to die. You could die tomorrow. You could die the day after tomorrow, but it is a certainty you are going to die. You could leave life right now. Marcus Aurelius says, let that determine what you do and say and think. 3.
Solid. Memento mori, right? You could die right now. It is blunt, but it is a nice way to sort of go through your day. It will help you with gratitude. It will help you with seeing things in the right perspective. It will help you in saying the things that need to be said to the people that need to hear them in a positive, important way, right? Like, if you are living your life with the notion that you could pass, right, in the next few moments, if you are preparing yourself that way with the way you carry yourself, you're going to have a lot less anxiety. It seems extreme. It kind of is, but life on this planet is extreme. It's intense, and carrying yourself in that way can go a long way. All right, let's look at this one here from I believe this is Steve Harvey. However you feel about Steve Harvey, I happen to think he's can be pretty insightful in some things. This one in particular, talking about your relationships.
Talking about your relationship to other people. Here is the best advice I ever got. When you get married, form a two-handed circle. Don't let nobody else in that circle, because if you let your mama in, she gonna mess it up. Yeah. You can't let your friends in, they gonna mess it up. Form a two-handed circle. Don't let nobody in it. You good. Stop.
That's some great advice. I've been married for a long time, and one of the things, I'm not perfect in it by any stretch. We've had our ups and downs, but one of the things I do try to practice is keeping private things between me and my wife private, right? I don't invite other people into discussing our problems and overly sharing those things. It's important to have people you trust in your life that you could share those things with, and that should be a very small amount of people and not a lot of people. If you're sharing your private stuff in your most important relationships across several people, you probably should audit that, because their opinions and their feelings and their anxieties don't matter as it relates to your relationship with that one person. I agree with Steve Harvey 100% here in that you should keep it a very, what he says, a two-handed circle. The things between me and my wife are between me and my wife, not between, getting my friends' opinions and stuff on it. It doesn't mean you don't ask for help. It doesn't mean you can't get help. It doesn't mean you can't ask for advice. That's not what he's talking about. I think he's talking about overly sharing and overly doing those things. We all have that person who's, always oversharing about their relationships and stuff. And it always seems like those relationships are, it seem like they're just destined to fail. So, yeah. Look at this one. This one isn't a audio thing, but very interesting to think about this and how you control yourself, especially thinking through some of the Stoic approaches to things, or that Stoic filter. Places you should stay silent. This mindset.therapy is a great account. You should go follow it. But God, and I always do that. I should look it up, and I should have before this because I have the internet and I could do that. But I saw a quote one time that said, run things through this filter, in that there's 3 points to something that you should share. One is, should it be said? Should it be said now? Should it be said now by me? And if it passes those 3 things, then do it and say it. So places you should be silent. Be silent if you don't know the full story, right? This goes for the entire country of the United States, in all media, everywhere. Like, I feel like so many times we're making commentary and giving our opinions of things before we know the full story. I mean, how many times do you hear of someone being accused of something, and there's thousands of YouTube videos about, how that person's this way and how that person's that way. And yet there's been no actual, nothing. Like, take the whole, Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, if you could stomach that. And trust me, I did. I went down a very deep rabbit hole over that one. But, a lot of that was like the court of public opinion, and it wasn't even, the full story wasn't even out there. Maybe not a great example because we don't even know what's true and what's not true. Be silent when you feel too emotional. You can definitely say things that you will regret by speaking from emotion instead of from, your controlled mind. That's definitely one. If you have this issue, you should, take the time to really self-audit some things and see where you're sort of going off the rails on that if you're an overly emotional person. Be silent in the heat of anger. That's a very specific emotion, I would imagine. But, whereas this other one, it's like you could be sad or confused or scared or whatever, where anger is a very specific one where, don't lash out and don't create an argument into a really, really bad argument that has repercussions. Be in control. Be silent if your words can offend a person. If you can't speak candidly, then don't. There's, there are people that I know, and we've all got these people in our lives that they're like, I tell the truth no matter what, and they just say things, and you really can't you should be truthful. You should always, tell people the truth and share your opinion without fear. But you can't do that and say that you're a truthful person and let that sort of hide the fact that you're just being a dick. Because sometimes people do that and they say things to be mean or whatever, and they're hiding behind this idea that I'm just being a truthful person. And that, I'm a truthful person. I always tell you how it is. That's cool. But you don't need to do that if you're just going to offend someone, right? Especially if they haven't asked you. That's another one of mine. I'm always trying to, aside from these podcasts, I generally try to not give someone my opinion or my advice unless they're asking for it, unless we're in a conversational situation where they're asking for that. I don't want to just give that out randomly. Be silent if your words can destroy a friendship. All those other things combined, don't, definitely be careful and don't say things that you can't come back from. Be silent if you can't do it without yelling. Yeah. If you have to yell to get your point across, you should probably exit that conversation. It's probably not going the way that you think it should. That's not a great way to communicate with anyone. And usually the thing you're trying to communicate is not going to come across. It's going to be, the actual emotion that someone's going to remember, not the words that you say. Be silent if your silence can save bonds. So if being silent is the thing that you need to do, definitely do it. And I hope that one makes sense, because sometimes you have to let something go. It's like the Stoic things we've been talking about. You don't have to have an opinion. You don't have to offend. You don't have to. Your response is in your control. I like this account a lot. I think you should go follow it and check it out. I do. They've got a lot of great stuff almost every day, and like this one, you can really dig through it.
5 types of friends. Very first one is your covenant friend. This is the guy who is your ride or die, and they are always there for you. Your spiritual friend.
Your ride or die friend. These are the 5 types of friends that you should have. These are some good ones, and it makes me kind of take stock of people in my life. And that first one, the ride or die, we all need that person that's going to be there with you and for you no matter what.
This is the person that'll pray for you. This is the person that you go for advice.
We do need that friend in our life that we go for advice. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mentor, although that's probably one I would add to the list. But that person that we do ask advice of. And be careful of the advice that you do ask them, but it's important to have that
spiritual advice when you're down. This one's really hard to come by. It's called a confidant. Who do you go to when you have life decisions? The one you can share wins with. Because sometimes we can't share wins because people are jealous. This person right here, your confidant, come to him and say, hey, bro, check it out. Just made $1 million. And they go, good for you, bro. Good for you. What's next?
That is definitely a good friend archetype to look for, the one that really roots for you. I've got a person in my life that's a good friend of mine. He's like that, and I can tell that he just genuinely is rooting for my success. In terms of our friendship, it's a very growth-oriented one, and it's not one that, he feels that my wins mean his loss. And that's also something you could expand on into society in general, in that I feel like there's a lot of groups that do that, where we don't, like, my groups or my type of person, whatever, my success doesn't mean that the other ones have to be torn down in order for mine to be successful. We can all be successful. We're friends. We should both root for each other.
Next, your hospitable friend. This person cares for your well-being. This person right here is always like, hey, man, how are you doing? No, I don't care about how you're doing at work. How's your heart? Do you have that friend? If you don't have that friend, you need to seek out that friend, because that friend brings life. And then lastly, we all need a hitman. You know what a hitman friend does? Hey, bro, check it out. Some stuff went down. They don't ask questions. They go get a bat and they roll out. You need that friend too. You got me?
That's a funny one. I remember that movie with it's about these guys in Boston. It's got Hawkeye and Ben Affleck, and I forget Jeremy Renner and Ben Affleck, and they play these hoods basically from Boston. And he comes in, he's like, hey, don't need you to ask questions. I just need you to get ready, come with me. We're gonna hurt some people, and that's all I got to say about it. He's like, all right, which car we driving? That's we need that friend for sure. Hopefully you have that one. But the other one, the sort of like heart check, that person that's making sure you're okay, that person cares about you. And there was another video I saw of Theo Vaughn. Is a comedian, Theo Vaughn, and he was saying that when he was growing up, he was very depressed because he was lonely, and that he explained loneliness as not that you don't have anyone, but that there's no one who has you, right? And I think that a lot of loneliness can be overcome in our lives if we know that there are people, a person or people that have our well-being in their heart and on their mind. And that is sort of an antidote to loneliness, I think, and something we could look for. Really cool ones here. I like this. I would like to take a class with that guy. That'd be cool. All right, another Alex Hormozy one here. But I think this one's pretty poignant.
Who are telling you, must be nice, or you think you're better than us, or, so we can't drink anymore. That's when you can be like, yeah. Then what? Well, then we wouldn't be friends. You're not going to be friends with them eventually anyways, I promise you. Anyone who says that to you, you're not going to be friends with. If you want to ultimately become the person you want to become, they're only going to reject you harder and harder until eventually you have nothing to share about. And the only thing that you'll talk about is the past. A great way to know when to cut a friend is when they only talk about your past.
There you go, man. Great way to know when to cut a friend is when all they want to talk about is the past. We all have those people. Hopefully you're not one of those people. If you are, check yourself. It goes into some of the other things we've talked about on this podcast before, where those that support you will support you at one point, but then not really want to support you anymore whenever you're sort of surpassing where they are. It's okay to have people in your life who are on a certain path as you and on a certain level as you, and then as you grow or change, it could be lateral. Hopefully it's not backwards, but you're not really on the same wavelength as they are anymore, and that's okay. That's called growth. And those people can really, for lack of a better term, hold you back a bit, or keep you from where you want to get to because of the way they're looking at you. And like he says, a great way to tell that is when all they want to do is talk about past things, when they don't want to talk about where we're going or our goals or how you're progressing, and they don't want to be part of that. They just want to keep you where you were in their memory because they're not progressing. They're not doing anything, and that's a tough place to be, and it's tough to be around people like that. Some good words of advice from Alex. Another list-based one here. I'm just going to look at this one page though, from Chris Wills. Good podcast too. It's a huge podcast, but he also has a great Instagram channel. But here's a list of things that are not doing the thing. Preparing to do the thing isn't doing the thing. Scheduling time to do the thing isn't doing the thing. Making a to-do list for the thing isn't doing the thing. Man, I coach a lot of people where this is the number one problem, in that they have to get started. And I think, we've had some of these on here that talk about fear of failure, failure in general, fear of how we look publicly, how we other people sort of think of us, I think is one that affects people's ability to get going. And this is sort of something that people do to get in the way of starting because they have these other fears or whatever. Planning, what do they call it? Paralysis by analysis. I mean, it can be personal, it can be business wise. You're afraid to lose money, you're afraid to mess your business up, you're afraid to ruin a project or whatever, and so you get stuck in this like planning phase, and it can really hold you back. But this is a good one. It was also in his newsletter, I think. But making, just when you're deep in the planning, just know why you're planning, and have that planning be a portion of the attack. Not just I know a lot of people that just do a ton of planning and that's it. They never act on it. Just like these things from the debrief here, you have to act on them. And remember, these debrief type things, they're just out here to hopefully pull some usefulness out of the internet. There's so much junk, so many things that we come across. If you spend any time on your apps or whatever, you're going to come across videos and things that maybe inspire you, like I do. Try to pull something from it. Try to find something that you can act on, and that's what the debrief is for. So if you have any that you've come across that you think are particularly good, send them to me. I would love to see them, maybe talk about them, maybe get you on the show to talk about them. Who knows? But definitely send them to me. I appreciate it. And until next time, get after it, y'all.